If you want to know how work is done, you know who you got to talk to? The people who have to do the work. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Pre-Accident Podcast. I am the man driving the bus today, young Toderick von Conklinstein. And today is a great day because today we're going to talk to the pointier end of the stick. Not the pointiest end of the stick, but the pointier end of the stick. I'm always trying to move down the stick. It's weird. On the podcast, you can always get people that are up high on the stick, but get them down low on the stick, that's a little harder because they get, embarrassed or shy, whatever the word is. This guy today, embarrassed and shy, are not words I would use to describe him. In fact, we got to spend some time together giving a presentation, and he told me, I'm not even going to say his name yet, that's how cool I am. He told me that he'd rather speak to 10,000 people than to one person. So I think that qualifies as not very embarrassed or shy. It also speaks greatly to intimacy issues, but we can talk about that later. So how's your summer going? Is it winding down as they ought to do? Because it's September, and you know what that means. September is always September, and that's exciting as can be. So from my side, This podcast is probably going to catch you when I'm deep in the middle of Winfield Bluegrass Festival in Winfield, Kansas. National Flat Picking Championships. Look it up on the internet and see if it isn't appealing. I told you, I think already, if I haven't, I can't believe it, that I rent a golf cart from a company called Wichita Golf Cars. Not carts, cars. And they have golf carts available you can rent for the weekend. And that has changed everything. And last year I put a green police light on it that I ordered on Amazon. Very fun. I don't know what I'm doing this year. I'll think of something, kind of trick it out. In a way, it's kind of like the bluegrass version of Burning Man. That's how I think of it. But it's really fun. You have to kind of like banjos. If you're not into banjos, and I know many of you aren't because you tell me this often, but if you're into banjos and mandolins and guitars and oddie harps and those kind of things, you'd like Winfield. Also, if you were into hanging out with friends and walking around at night and listening to people play in the campgrounds, it's pretty fun. So that's what I'm going to do. In fact, I'm quite certain as you hear this podcast, that is where I'll be. So that's how certain I am that that's going to happen. Other than that, man, I don't know what else to tell you. It's crazy. This podcast is a guy named DeLan Heath. And DeLan is I guess the word would be kind of a regional safety guy. Does that make sense? He's out there interfacing a lot with safety specialists in the field. And I actually think that is a kind of an unsung hero job for sure. And I also think it's a job that we haven't had a lot of conversations around in order to create sort of success for these guys. Because that position between sort of the corporate, why do I keep saying sort of, between the corporate office and the actual field specialist, there's some interpretation there. And it's kind of a pinch point. I always kind of think the field guys are getting smashed because they've got all the workers who just want to do work, and then they've got all the rules that they have to sort of be in charge of. And then the corporate people, they have to take care of all the pressures that corporate office has. Shareholders and boards of directors and big senior managers with nice shoes. And then you have this go-between, this interloper, if you were, this interpreter who lives in the middle and actually manages, usually pretty wide swaths of work and lots and lots of variability. And for the most part, what DeLan does is help people solve problems. And I think that's super interesting. And it goes back to kind of how I started this podcast. If you want to know how this work is done, how the work of high reliability, of safety differently, of human performance is done, the best people you ought to talk to are the people who actually do the work. Because the stories they tell are much more interesting than the theoretical stories we can talk about all day long. I can show you 500 slides. They're all going to kind of look the same, but 500 nonetheless. Or I can hear a story of somebody in the field practicing this new view, leading learning teams, or doing a new view investigation, or better yet, solving the world's great mystery, what's happening when nothing bad's happening, looking at how success is made in real time, the majority of time, for workers who interface constantly with dynamic risks and successful work. And that's why I almost begged deLan into being on the podcast. But to get him on, well, I had him, he was trapped, so he didn't really have a way out of it. Because deLan, I think they drew straws or cut cards or something, and somebody had to drive me back to the airport, and we were pretty far out. We were 3-4 hours out of the Birmingham airport, and deLan was the one that drove me back. And it was interesting because we got to talk a lot, and that was good. We also got to go through deLan's hometown. So I learned an awful lot about what it was like for deLan to grow up. And he talks about that a little bit on the podcast, and that's interesting as well. All in all, it was a great trip and a new friendship. And I think that, my friends, is what it's all about. So I think I should shut up and invite you into the conversation. So without much further ado, that's French, sit back and listen to Todd and deLan on a trip through Lower Alabama. All right, man, introduce yourself.
My name is deLan Heath. I work for the wonderful company of Alabama Power Company in Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm a safety and health coordinator.
And you're a part of kind of the push towards the new view, Safety Differently, the Human Performance Program. So deLan and I are driving across Alabama. We just did a meeting this morning, and now we're heading to Birmingham, where deLan can go home and enjoy. I, on the other hand, have to stay in a hotel. I'm not complaining.
Very nice hotel, though.
It's a hipster hotel. I'm staying where the hipsters stay.
Correct.
So that's good. So, deLan, tell me about your sort of safety journey. What do you think about this new view stuff, and what are you learning on the way?
So I guess my journey began actually as a college student who was interested in electrical engineering. And as I kind of got into a little deep into it, I was like, wow, this is really not what I want to do, probably. So I got with one of my advisors, and they kind of introduced me to the concept of actually majoring in safety and health management. And prior to that, you do get introduced to the concept of safety, whether it's through electrical safety, NFPA stuff, HAZCOM, all that good stuff. So it just kind of built on that. And funny thing is, I tell people that my mom was an insurance person and my dad was a truck driver. So from that standpoint, I'm kind of in the middle, like between workers' comp and DOT. So it's kind of how that happened and whatnot. But I learned it the same as everyone else. The traditional way of kind of how you manage safety is through how you manage stats, I guess, for lack of a better term, in terms of, when things happen, there's been this reaction of, oh my goodness, we had somebody get hurt. And now I think it's going to kind of the same reaction of, oh my goodness, we had somebody get hurt, but not so much what did they do to get hurt, as opposed to, let's really look at how this happened and what we can do to keep it from happening to anybody again. Just not correcting this person, but correcting everybody. So I think it's a good thing. As a matter of fact, one of my coworkers and I were talking about at breakfast this morning, which Todd missed, by the way, that it's the new wave, the same as if probably 10 years ago, PSM was the new wave. So PSM was a big deal in the early and mid 2000s, and that was kind of like the new thing, kind of along with system safety and things of that nature. So this is the next turn. So I'm excited.
What's it feel? I mean, how did it start? What's it feel like for you guys? What do you think the impetus was to change the way you're thinking?
Well, I think it's been brought forth by some of our leadership, but it's introducing the idea that, hey, maybe just punishing people isn't going to fix our problems, and I think our leadership has really bought into that. And I think it's an exciting time just because this is a new way for not just safety people, but for everybody to look at it. So I think this is probably going to be far more of where everybody feels a part of it, as opposed to before we're just telling you stuff that, hey, this is what you're going to do, as opposed to now it's far more inclusive, and I think you'll increase the transparency of people within the organization, which is only make us better.
So you're in the field level. How's it feel different in the field? What are you doing differently now than you were doing?
I'm not exactly in the field level. I am far more behind the scenes, so that's probably not a good question for me. I work in the corporate group, so I get out to the field sporadically. However, in talking to guys that I know who are in the field level, people are excited about some of the things that they've heard that we're trying to do. Just in the way that we now will go about looking at incidents is exciting to people, because before, people always, I shouldn't say always, but people could have very quickly thought that this is going to be a witch hunt to figure out what this person did wrong, and at that point, what we're going to do to discipline them. Which, in all honesty, I don't think was ever really the case. But perception is what perception is.
So, how do you support the field people differently under this new view? What's different about that?
I think,
and by field people, let me correct myself. How do you support the field safety specialists? So not the workers touching the tools. I mean, we can talk about them; they're great. But I think one of the things we don't talk enough about is how we support the safety professionals in the field in sort of changing their paradigm and getting them towards this kind of new view.
So what we're going through right now for pretty much all of our guys, whether you're in the corporate office, and when I say all of our guys, I mean all of the safety and health professionals, whether you're in the corporate office or whether you are a field person who is actually going out with our crews or working in our plants, is we're going through these set of training classes around HP, which some of your colleagues have helped us out with, as well as other workshops. So I think that's one way. Secondly, we've equipped them with the tools to actually go out and do this. Like, in other words, it's when this kicks off, there's these rollouts for it. So we're going to communicate so that when they actually get out there and get ready to do these things, the people in the room, this won't be a, okay, so what are we doing here kind of concept. It's more of, hey, we've heard about this stuff and we're excited to be a part of the process.
So what are these tools and what do they look like?
We've gone through training classes. As a matter of fact, is it Andrea? What's her last name? I forget Andrea's last name. Baker. Andrea Baker came through, and she actually did a 2-day class with pretty much, at the time that I went through it, was probably 40% of our field safety people. And we practiced exactly how to carry out what we call event learnings when something has happened. We even did role play. It was pretty cool. Actually, I should have won an Oscar for my acting. I think I should have, but Andrea didn't give me one. But anyway,
that's coming. I think she mailed it to you.
I appreciate that. I'll definitely make sure you get my address. But it's things like that, as well as just making sure that they understand that this is the time to actually open up your mind and kind of get away from the traditional thinking in the way that we used to do this. Because again, if I've done it in my 10-year career that I've been doing this, if you have someone who's been doing this for 25 years, they've been doing it 15 years longer than I have. So it would definitely take just as much, if not more, time for your mindset to turn that corner.
Is this changing your safety management system?
It is.
How's it changing it?
Well, it is. Well, for one, it's being led by our upper echelon safety leaders. So from that standpoint, it's immediately when something takes place, or even before something takes place, we now open up that dialogue. If we have stuff that happens good, we'll take a look at it. I think you heard our director talk about it today, that there's already an event learning set up for successful work on things that in the past we've had issues with. So nothing's happened as of yet, but we've seen what we can do this successfully, and now we're actually going to go take a look at it, and we're going to end up sharing that best practice so that the next time that something like this happens, we can go back and look at it and say, okay, so what did we miss?
Would you have looked at successful work in the past? I mean, is this a part of it?
I think that we have, but not in this narrative. Meaning, in the group that I came from before, we would always do like post-job things, but it was not only safety. It was more of the production, was how you laid things out. So just to make sure that we did stuff as efficiently as possible. So I do think that we've looked at things like this before, but these would be specifically from a safety standpoint.
What are the highlights that you've noticed? What are the things about this that you're liking? The things that you think are making the biggest difference?
Well, the highlight that I noticed is that this is for the first time that I can recall something that I think most of our hands-on people with the actual tools are excited about. Like, it's something they feel is going to be beneficial, as opposed to us putting out other things that they just like, okay, this is another rule, as opposed to no, they're actually excited about this because they're involved. Like, this isn't something that we're just pushing down their throat. Like, this is something that we're saying, hey, no, come with us. Like, this is the way that we think we need to go, and they're excited about that. So I think that's the biggest change that I've seen thus far.
So if you're going to give advice to safety people who are listening to this, what have you learned? What would you not do? What have you learned? What are the lessons you guys are taking out of this?
So if I was going to give advice, what I would say, the first thing is be open-minded, because the first time you sit through one of these workshops, you might not get it, may not even the second time. You may not even get it the 10th time, but at the same time, as long as you're open-minded and you keep listening and you keep opening up to it, it'll eventually, the light bulb will eventually come on. I was telling you earlier that it's probably taken me, or it took me probably by the third or fourth time I actually sat down to it to completely grasp it. And the first time was a general conversation just with someone who had been doing this for about 2 years. So that would be the first thing that I would say. And I would also say the second thing is, even once you get it, give other people time to get it. Like, if you didn't get it overnight, there's not a good chance that the mechanic or that the frontline supervisor or what have you, they're going to get it overnight. But be willing to walk with them through the process, because if you can get them out on the other side, I think it'll be beneficial to you both as well as the company.
Tell me a success story. Show me how this works.
So I haven't been fully a part of one that we've done yet. So I can't give you a success story. Now, there have been people in the company that's done it. So I'm really at the beginning of this journey. Yeah.
What's it feel like?
Again, it's exciting to me because, again, I'm all about getting feedback from our actual craft, and the ones that I've actually brought this to, especially after days like today, they're excited just because it doesn't sound as if it's something that we're pushing down their throat. It doesn't, and it also doesn't sound as if something that we're just another rule that we're throwing out there from. Also, I do think it kind of helps that the previous way that we've done this, merely the way that we would have gotten to the table is completely different. Our previous process, it was highly based on the outcome of an injury, and it didn't always give a lot of consideration into the incident itself, whereas this doesn't really take fully into account, or the way we're going, it doesn't really take fully into account even if anyone was injured. Like, it may not matter that there was an injury. It could be it could have been property damage. It could have been just any situation to where someone could have been significantly injured, or if we consider it information rich. So from that standpoint, a lot of what we may start looking at may have absolutely nothing to do with an actual injury that took place, but more so something we see that we can improve on.
Perfect. Can we check back in with you later as your experience grows?
Absolutely.
Deal, man. You got it. Thank you.
How about that little conversation? Not too bad, huh? It was interesting. It was fun. It was really fun to get to meet DeLan. It was really fun to talk to his guys in the field, and it was great to watch them. They're doing great things and trying every day to make the world a better place, trying every day to not punish their way into submission, to actually grow and learn and improve by understanding really the context of how things happen. Both failures, because we learn from failures, but more importantly, normal work, success work. Where are we in a position where our safeguards are strong and robust, and where are we in positions where we just lack the capacity to manage variability? If it goes bad here, there's not a lot of margin for maneuverability. There's no place for us to go. There's no place for us to move. And that is a pretty interesting conversation. deLan, thank you for that, man. You're a rock star. You sounded amazing. And thank you for listening as well. It's always great to have you on the podcast ride. No question about it. If you're new, welcome. This is a pretty good one to start. If you've listened for a long time, man, God bless you. You are a patient person, and I'm proud of you. As always, tell your friends. More is better. Subscribe, because that somehow makes some kind of difference somewhere. I don't know who, but it does. They tell me it's really important to say that. And last but not least, learn something new every single day. Have as much fun as you can possibly squeeze into a work site. And for goodness sakes, be safe.